March 15th, 44 BC. The city of Rome is alive. The streets are busy. The markets are loud. It feels like any other morning, but it isn't. Julius Caesar is getting ready to leave his home. His wife is crying. His doctors are worried. A soothsayer has warned him. Everyone around him is telling him the same thing. Don't go. And yet, he goes. Within the hour, he will be dead, stabbed 23 times by the men he called his friends, his colleagues, his allies. History remembers one name, Brutus. But here is the truth that history has been hiding for over 2,000 years. Brutus did not kill Caesar. Not really. The man who truly engineered the death of the most powerful person in the ancient world has been standing in the shadows this entire time, hiding behind a more famous name, letting someone else take the credit and the blame. Today, we find out who that really was. To understand the assassination, we first need to understand the man himself. By 44 BC, Julius Caesar was unlike anything Rome had ever seen. He had started as a politician, a clever one, charming, ambitious, and brutally intelligent. But over the years, he had become something much more than that. He conquered Gaul, a massive territory covering most of modern-day France, a campaign that lasted nearly a decade, a campaign so violent and so total that some historians estimate over 1 million people died. 1 million. He crossed the Rubicon, a small river that every Roman general knew you were never supposed to cross with your army. It was the law. It was the line between military power and civilian Rome. When Caesar crossed it, he wasn't just breaking a rule. He was starting a civil war, and he won. He defeated Pompey, his former ally, and the most powerful general in Rome at the time. He chased him all the way to Egypt, and when Caesar arrived in Egypt, Pompey was already dead, killed by the Egyptians who thought it would please Caesar. It didn't. And then, he made himself dictator perpetuo, dictator, for life. Rome had used dictators before, but always temporarily. Always for a specific crisis. 6 months maximum. And then power went back to the Senate. That was the deal. That was the system that had kept Rome stable for centuries. Caesar threw that system away. He started appointing senators himself, rewriting laws, making decisions alone that should have been made collectively. And people started to whisper, he wants to be king. And in Rome, that word, king, was a death sentence. Romans had expelled their last king over 500 years earlier. A king named Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud. He had been cruel, arrogant, and tyrannical. And when the Romans finally rose up and threw him out, they made a promise to themselves and to their children and to every generation that would come after them. Never again. The word rex on king was not just unpopular in Rome, it was dangerous. It was poison. Just saying it out loud in the wrong context could end your career, end your life. So when Caesar started acting like one, the Senate started watching and waiting. Now, when most people think about the assassination of Julius Caesar, they think about one man, Brutus. And why wouldn't they? Shakespeare wrote an entire play about it. Et tu, Brute. Those 3 words have echoed through history for centuries. Brutus has become the symbol of betrayal, the man who stabbed his friend in the back, literally. But here is what most people don't know. There were 23 men with knives that day. 23. This was not a crime of passion. This was not one angry man making a split-second decision. This was an organized, carefully planned, meticulously executed conspiracy, months in the making, involving some of the most powerful men in Rome. And the man at the center of it all was not Brutus. It was Gaius Cassius Longinus Cassius. He was everything Brutus was not. Where Brutus was noble and idealistic, Cassius was cold and calculated. Where Brutus acted out of principle, Cassius acted out of ambition, out of resentment, out of a deep and burning hatred for the man who had taken everything he believed Rome should be and crushed it under his boot. Cassius had fought against Caesar in the Civil War. He had been on the losing side, and even though Caesar had pardoned him, even showed him favor afterward, Cassius never forgot, never forgave. He smiled at Caesar in public. He accepted the pardon gracefully. He played the game. But inside, he was already planning. Cassius knew something crucial. He knew that to kill Caesar, he needed more than knives. He needed legitimacy. He needed a name that Romans would respect, a name that would make the murder look like justice instead of treason. He needed Brutus. Marcus Junius Brutus was one of the most respected men in Rome. His family had a legendary history. One of his ancestors, Lucius Junius Brutus, was the man who had expelled Tarquin the Proud 500 years earlier, the man who had ended the Roman monarchy the first time. His name was written into the very identity of the Roman Republic. Cassius understood that if Brutus was part of the conspiracy, Romans might actually believe this was the right thing to do. So he went to work. For weeks, maybe months, Cassius carefully, patiently, relentlessly worked on Brutus. He had anonymous letters delivered to his home, letters that reminded him of his ancestor, letters that asked him, "What would your family think if they could see Rome now?" Letters that slowly, gradually, planted a seed of doubt, a seed of guilt, a seed of duty. He didn't ask Brutus to join a conspiracy. He made Brutus feel like he had no choice, until the day came when Brutus looked in the mirror and believed with his whole heart that killing Caesar was not a crime. It was his destiny, and that was exactly what Cassius needed. Without Cassius, there is no conspiracy. Without Cassius, Caesar lives. History remembers Brutus because Brutus was the face, the noble name, the tragic hero. But Cassius was the architect. But here is where the story takes a turn that nobody expects. Because even if we accept that Cassius was the true mastermind, there is one more layer to this story. One more question that historians have been arguing about for centuries. What if Caesar knew, not suspected, not feared, but actually knew? Think about what we know. A soothsayer approached Caesar weeks before the assassination, in public, in front of witnesses, and told him directly, "Beware the Ides of March." Caesar dismissed him, laughed it off. But he remembered. His wife Calpurnia had a nightmare the night before, a vivid, terrifying dream in which Caesar was murdered. She woke up shaking. She begged him not to go to the Senate. She held his arm. She wept. This was not a woman being dramatic. This was a woman genuinely terrified of what the day might bring. His own doctors examined him that morning and advised him to stay home. They were concerned about his health, his epilepsy, the stress he had been under. Caesar had also received a written warning, a note, handed to him as he entered the theater of Pompey, that apparently contained the names of the conspirators and the details of the plot. He never read it. He held it in his hand the entire time, and never opened it. Why? One explanation is pride. Caesar was the most powerful man in the world. To cancel his appearance because of a bad dream or a street prophet would be a sign of weakness, and Caesar did not show weakness. But there is another explanation, one that is darker and far more interesting. Caesar may have known exactly what was going to happen and chosen to let it happen anyway. Because Caesar was a man who thought in centuries, not days. He understood legacy. He understood that great men are not just remembered for what they do in life, but for how they die. And Caesar had a problem. He had no legitimate son. He was growing older. His enemies were everywhere. The republic he had dismantled was not going to stay quiet forever. There would be another civil war, another Pompey, another challenger. But a murdered Caesar? A Caesar stabbed to death in the Senate by the very men who claimed to love the republic? That Caesar becomes a martyr. That Caesar becomes a god. That Caesar becomes eternal. And he was right. Within months of his death, his adopted son Octavian was using Caesar's name to rally armies. Within years, the Senate had officially declared Caesar a god, a literal god, Divus Iulius, the divine Julius. And Octavian, now calling himself the son of a god, used that to justify seizing total power and becoming Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. Caesar's death didn't destroy his power. It multiplied it. So ask yourself the question one more time. Who really killed Caesar? Cassius planned it. Brutus gave it a face. The broken Senate system made it inevitable. And Caesar himself may have walked straight into it, with his eyes wide open. The Ides of March didn't just kill a man. It killed a republic. 500 years of Roman democracy. Gone. In one morning. In one room. With 23 knives. And rising from the ashes of that republic, an empire. The man who benefited most from everything that happened on that day was not in that room. He was a teenager. Quiet. Unassuming. Watching everything from a distance. Taking notes. His name was Octavian. And the story of how that quiet teenager turned Caesar's murder into the greatest power grab in the history of the ancient world. That is a story for next time. If you made it this far, you clearly love Roman history as much as I do. Hit subscribe, because we are just getting started. See you in the next one.